Have you ever heard the phrase, big things come in small packages? That statement isn't always true, but in today's video, we're going to be looking at a set of powered speakers that are small in size, but offer huge value as well as performance. Today, we're going to be reviewing the Fives by Klipsch. Now, before we get into the review, if you're passionate about home theater, audio, as well as video, hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to hit that bell notification so that you'll be notified every time I produce a new video. Now in this video, I'm not going to go over the specs because I did that in my previous unboxing and overview, as well as provided some audio demos of the speakers themselves. So if you're interested in that video, I'll leave a link to it in the card above, as well as in the description below. Now the first thing I want to talk about is the looks. These little speakers are gorgeous. I really like a lot of the design choices that Klipsch made with this series. The first thing we look at is the finish. So these come in a real wood veneer. You can either get them in a matte black or in the walnut finish that I had Klipsch send me. One thing that did surprise me is most Klipsch speakers have a very smooth finish, and when you put your hand across this speaker, you can kind of feel the roughness of it. You can feel the grains in the wood itself. And I think that was done from Klipsch intentionally. Now looking at the front of the speakers, we've got this really cool vintage grayish kind of fabric woven speaker grill cover. Now the grill is magnetic and Klipsch uses big magnets. Now one thing I really like about that is no matter how I place this near the speaker, it always aligns exactly where it needs to be. I don't have to adjust the speaker grill. I just put it close to it and it easily attaches to the speaker. Now because the Fives got a lot of inspiration from the Heritage series, they wanted to use a paper cone for the woofer as opposed to their typical copper cerametallic woofer that they have in their Reference series as well as the Reference Premier series. Then on the top we've got these really cool metal dials that allow you to adjust the volume as well as your inputs. Now because of these different characteristics from modern to retro, I think this could really appeal and blend very well with a wide variety of room environments. Anywhere from a very modern and sleek, clean look to a more laid back kind of country style feel for your living room or maybe a bedroom or even a home office. Now in my living room, I have the very large RF73s from Klipsch, and my wife, honestly, she doesn't like these big honking speakers in the living room. And I recently brought these out into the living room to kind of set up. I wanted to hear what they sounded like, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. But she told me, I think you should like swap the big ones out for those little ones. I like those. Now, honestly, guys, that's big coming from my wife. My wife doesn't like speakers. That was the main reason why I have a dedicated theater room. Her thought was if I have a theater room, I can put all the speakers I want in here, close the door, and she never has to look at them until she comes in the room. And so for Jessica to say that she really likes the style and the design as well as just the size of these, honestly guys, that's saying a lot coming from my wife. Now it's one thing to see the actual dimensions on paper, but here's a real world comparison of them sitting next to my Klipsch RB61 version 2s. So as you can see in comparison, these are a lot smaller, not only in width, height, but also depth. Now because of their small form factor, I think these are going to fit very nicely in a lot of different applications, and we'll talk about some of those applications near the end of this video. Now one thing that really kind of surprised me was the bottom of the speaker. Now this is something that you never really look at, but it has an incredible functionality to it. Now typically most brands, including Klipsch, include like some rubber small feet to mount on the bottom of speakers so that they don't slide around on smooth surfaces. But with the Fives, Klipsch chose to go an entirely different route, and I really like what they've done here. On the bottom of the speaker, there's a small thin layer of cork that provides as this non-slip surface so that when you put it on, say, a table or a countertop, when the bass is really kicking, these speakers don't move. Now I think the cork bottom is so much classier and cleaner than the small rubber feet. So now let's talk about the sound. What do these little guys sound like? Well, the first thing I noticed when I crank these up is they've got a huge sound for a very, very small speaker. Now, initially, I'll just be honest with you, I wasn't expecting a lot from a 4.5-inch driver. I mean, let's face it, my Klipsch La Scalas have 15-inch drivers in it. My JTR subwoofers have dual 18s in it. I'm used to big bass, and I'm used to really solid bass. And so honestly, I just didn't expect much from them. But guys, I'm gonna tell you, I was very pleasantly surprised at how tight, how clean, and how much depth these little guys produce. Now, I remember reviewing the SVS Prime Wireless probably about a year, maybe a year and a half ago. And in that review, I remember listening to Angel by Sarah McLachlan. Now, during that song, there are 3 kind of low frequency notes. You'll hear this note here, and then it goes down 1, and then down even further. And I remember in that review stating that the SVS Prime Wireless did not reproduce that 3rd note. And so basically, I heard the first note, heard the second note, and then that 3rd one, it was just gone. Well, I was really surprised that the 5s was able to produce all 3 of those notes and had just this nice full bottom end. It's just a great low extension from a very, very small driver, such as the 4.5-inch that's in the 5. Now, during that song, Sarah's voice was just gorgeous. I mean, just incredibly melodic, just had a really great texture to her voice, and you began to hear all of those details and those nuances, you know, when she would breathe or when she would exhale, and you pick up all those little pieces because of that horn-loaded tweeter. Now, during the 3 weeks that I've had the 5s, I've listened to a lot of music on Qobuz, which is a high-resolution streaming provider. Now, most of the time, the music just sounded fantastic. I found myself just kind of closing my eyes and bobbing my head, just kind of being lost in the music itself. Vocals were locked into the center, just had really, really great imaging. Just this huge sound when the speakers are set up properly. Now, if you're sitting too far from these speakers and you don't have kind of like this equilateral triangle, I did find that the imaging wasn't near as good. But once I had the right distance apart from each other in relation to the distance that I was sitting from them, man, these sound fantastic. Now, there were some times that I was listening to music that the woofers really had almost too much bass. Not too much bass in the fact that, you know, it was shaking my room, but it just almost seemed like it, at times, it can overpower maybe say the mid-range. And so it would be nice to either have app controllability to where you could either back that down a little bit, or maybe even have some presets, kind of like a low, medium, high. So possibly in the future, if they come out with an app that will work with this, that would be a really cool feature to have. Now, speaking of bass, one thing that I found that was pretty intriguing is the fact that they had solid bass, whether I put them up, close to the wall or pulled them out from the wall, maybe like a foot to a foot and a half. These speakers produce a good amount of bottom end, and a lot of that is due to the DSP that they've got included inside the speaker. So by pulling these out away from the wall, you will kind of tone down the bass somewhat, but the good news is it doesn't like suck away all the bass. It's not like you have to place these speakers really close to the wall to get that extra boundary gain. They really don't need the extra gain. Now, some of the tracks that I used that really sounded phenomenal on the 5s was Keith Don't Go from Niles Lofgren. That's an acoustic live, a lot of guitar, just very, very detailed. The guitar just sounds really rich, has a nice texture to it. And then because these speakers produce a good amount of bottom end, you just get that nice thick sound from the guitar. Now, another one of my go-to demo tracks that I really like testing speakers out with is You're My Everything by Seawind. This track has a lot of just kind of bass guitar in it, so that really just allows you to be able to kind of experience and hear how well the woofer produces, you know, those mid bass and those little bit lower bass extensions. And then there's just this beautiful saxophone that comes in and just literally permeates the entire room with sound. And so the fives just sounded phenomenal with that track as well. Now, another great audio demo that I love hearing and especially sounded great on the fives was Trouble's What You're In by Finn Grinnell. Now, once again, this is just another great acoustic song to test out with your speakers. Just some beautiful, beautiful, deep, rich lyrics. His voice just has a lot of texture to it, and the fives just really pull that out and just allow you to kind of hear all of the intricacies in that. And then there's just a lot of guitar, and so you'll hear every pluck of the strings, every movement when their hand is sliding up and down the fret, just done really, really well and sound phenomenal on the fives. Now, I listen to 2-channel both here in my theater room as well as in my bedroom, and then also in my larger living room. Now, the living room is very open floor plan, got 12-foot ceilings. It's just very, very open. And these fives provided plenty of power, plenty of volume to really fill that room with great, great sound. Now, one thing I tested out quite extensively was the auto switching. Now, I was really impressed for the most part at how well it would switch between different inputs. And so basically with the fives, you can plug in, say for instance, a turntable, you can connect your smartphone or maybe a tablet or a laptop, but then you can also connect other things, maybe like a hard drive that has high resolution or maybe FLAC files that you want to play through it. And so everything plugs into this, or even your TV with HDMI, eARC. And so all of that connects to it, and then it basically senses what is playing and switches to that input automatically. Now, one thing I did notice is that if you're playing, let's say for instance, some music from your phone and you're connected to the fives via Bluetooth, once that connection is made, if you turn on your TV and let's say you're playing Netflix, you're not going to get the sound from Netflix and from your TV through the eARC. So then what I had to do is just go into my phone, go into my Bluetooth settings, and just disconnect the fives from my phone, and then it would automatically switch to the eARC HDMI input on the fives. Now, one thing I even did is I connected my Echo Dot to the fives using a 3.5 millimeter cable, and on the other end it has the RCA cable. So the RCA cables plug into the back of the fives, and then on the back there's a little toggle switch. You just have to make sure that it's set to line instead of phono. Now, one thing that's really cool about that is now we've added voice commands to the fives. And so we can take, say for instance, the Echo and say, Echo, play Janis Joplin from Spotify, and it'll connect to the fives and it'll play directly through that. And you can fast forward and you can pause and stop and change the volume using voice commands. And so I thought that was pretty slick as well. Now, the fives do produce a lot of bottom end on their own, but I was really curious to hear how they sounded connected with a subwoofer. And so Klipsch was gracious enough to send me a small 10-inch subwoofer, which is their R100 SW subwoofer. Now, this was a really good fit with the fives because it's, once again, it's a really small, kind of compact form factor that I could easily see going in a home office, a bedroom setup, or even a medium to small kind of living room. Now, one thing I thought was really cool is as soon as you connect an RCA cable, like a subwoofer cable, to the sub out on the rear of the fives, you can automatically see the crossover engage in the speaker. So it goes from massive excursion to very little excursion. And what's happening there is as soon as you plug in the cable, the RCA cable to the fives, you will see the crossover is now engaged. And so it's routing the lower frequencies that would normally be played through the woofer in the fives. Now those are being played and routed to the subwoofer. And so by doing this, it really enhanced music big time. Now, like I said, these produce a lot of bottom end on their own, and so if you don't want to connect a subwoofer to it, that definitely is still going to sound really good. But I found even with a budget-friendly subwoofer like this one, this added a lot of depth and bottom end that the fives just simply cannot reproduce. Instead of just hearing the bass, I actually began to feel the bass. Again, this is in a small to medium-sized room. If you had a much bigger room, you're probably going to want to go with a larger subwoofer, maybe a 12 or even a 15-inch. But adding a subwoofer seemed like we got better mid-range out of it. I was able to get more volume out of the speakers themselves, and it just had a really, really nice blend from the bookshelf speakers and the subwoofer itself. And so just a great fit. Again, this isn't Klipsch's high-end subwoofer. It's not the beast that's coming out, but it got the job done and it sounded really good. So I would highly recommend, if you have the fives, try pairing it with a subwoofer. I think you're going to be really pleased with that combination. Now let's talk about where do I feel that these would be a good fit, a good application for the fives. Honestly, because of the small form factor and this huge sound that they produce and even a good amount of bottom end, I could see it going in a lot of different applications. Maybe in a bedroom setup, whether you're just using it to listen to music or if you connect that to your TV through the eARC, that would be a great setup. If you've got a living room and maybe you don't have the ability or you don't want to, put 5 speakers or 7 speakers and Dolby Atmos, and you don't want to go to that extreme, this would be an incredible upgrade to just about every soundbar that's out on the market. Now, I could definitely see myself using these in my home office as studio monitors when I'm editing videos or listening to music. These just have a really small form factor that would much easier fit on a desk than my RB61 version 2s, which I have used in previous offices. Now, another application I could see a great use for these speakers would be a temporary outdoor setup. And what I mean by temporary is, let's say you're having a party, maybe you're having a barbecue with friends and family, or maybe you've got a swimming pool. And so I could see you setting these up outside for just some outdoor music listening. Again, the reason why I say temporary is you don't want to leave these outside. I don't think that would be a good fit, and that's really not what they're designed. But man, these would be phenomenal for an outdoor living area, when you've got guests coming over. And again, they're small enough that you could easily pull them out there, set them up on a table, set them up on some speaker stands. If you got speaker stands that are weighted, I could definitely see that. And then if you need a little bit more bottom end, you can always grab a small subwoofer and bring it and attach it outside as well. Now, because the speaker cable that's included with the fives is proprietary, if this length is not long enough for your application, you're going to need to purchase an extension to this. Now, as of the time of this video, I don't believe Klipsch has released that, but they did say that they're in the works of making an extension that will allow you to let this cable become a little bit longer in your setup. The other thing that I do like about this was the fact that it does have a screw-on connection. And so you never have to worry about this coming undone. It's just a nice fit. And then there's also this groove right in the top, so you can make sure that it only goes in the right way every single time. Now, we've talked about how the fives sound in 2-channel listening for music, but how do they perform for movies? Now, in my home theater, I have a 150-inch diagonal projection screen, but I don't have the ability to use eARC. In my living room, we don't have a TV. It's just a 2-channel setup for music listening. And then in our master bedroom, we don't have a TV there either. So I had to go to each one of my daughter's bedrooms to see which one of their TVs had eARC. And fortunately, one of my daughters did have a TV that supported eARC. So I brought the fives into my daughter's bedroom, connected an HDMI cable from the fives to the TV using the eARC connection. Now, by doing that, it allowed the sound from things that I was streaming like Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus to be able to send that audio directly into the fives. But it also allowed me to control the volume of the fives using the remote control to the TV, which is actually a pretty cool feature. Now, there were a couple of movies I tested out with the fives. Number one was Extraction with Chris Hemsworth. This is a really cool movie. It's got a lot of gunshots, so there's a lot of detail there and bullets that are flying, but you also have different scenes that are very impactful that sound awesome in my theater room, but I wanted to see how the fives handled those scenes, such as things that were exploding. Now, because of their small size, honestly, I really didn't expect much. Again, I kind of thought that because of the 4.5-inch driver, during a big scene, during a scene that has an explosion, I kind of thought the fives were going to kind of bottom out or just have some kind of muddied bass. I was really, really surprised at how well they handled those types of scenes. Now, during one of the scenes in Extraction, there was a truck that explodes. Now, during that scene, the fives had a really good, solid amount of bottom end, but they never distorted, and I had them up pretty loud. I think the TV volume was probably about 80 to 90% of the way up. Dialogue was really clear. I remember specifically there were some times where he was reloading his magazine and just how crystal clear just that sound of the magazine entering the gun. It just had a really great overall sound while watching movies. Now, I also connected the 10-inch Klipsch subwoofer to the fives and listened to some demos with movies as well. And honestly, it definitely had a little bit more bottom end and definitely reached down lower, but a 10-inch to me for movies isn't all that impressive. I mean, I haven't had a 10-inch for many, many, many years. Once I went with a 15 and now I've got 4 18s, maybe I'm a little bit biased on larger drivers that move a lot more air. But honestly, the fives by themselves, if you didn't have a subwoofer, it's still going to provide a good, solid top end to bottom end, clear dialogue, great mid-range throughout the movie. I just think they're just a good fit even for movies as well. So I've shared with you a lot of things that I really like about the fives. So now let's go over a few small things that I wasn't so impressed with. When I look at the Klipsch fives, these are really just a premium type speaker. They have a beautiful look to them. They have great classy design. Everything has this premium feel to it. Everything except for this little guy, the remote. And honestly, when you're buying a system like this, maybe you're not going to use the remote that much. I know I didn't. Most of everything I did was using my smartphone. I was able to stream everything directly to it. When I connected the Echo Dot to it, I was able to do that just vocally, and with my voice. So I really didn't find myself needing the remote, and that might be why Klipsch didn't provide like a premium kind of remote. But honestly, it works great. It has easy functionality. All the buttons that you need on there are there. It's just got a kind of a plasticky feel, and it kind of reminds me a lot of this guy, my Amazon Fire Stick TV, except it's just a little bit rounded feel. One other negative thing I saw was in regards to the speaker grill. If you take a look here, we can see that there's a little bit of waviness in the speaker grill. And so by having these speaker grills on and that woofer kind of pushing out, it probably doesn't touch this, but just the sound pressure and the bass waves coming from that, I think has caused this to have some little ripples in it. It's not super noticeable, but like I said, when you get in the right lighting, you can see that there's definitely some little waves in the fabric. Now, the last thing that could be potentially a negative would be the price. The fives come in at $799, which isn't super inexpensive, but I think for what you're getting in this speaker, incredible performance, almost like hi-fi level. When I close my eyes and I'm listening to these speakers, especially in 2-channel, I get the impression that these are much higher end speakers than what they really are. And so for $799 to get a speaker that performs this well for music as well as movies, has a good amount of bottom end so you don't have to have a subwoofer attached, plus the added functionality of being able to just hook just about everything to this and be able to auto switch between those inputs, I think provides a great value even at $7.99. So my last 3 weeks with the 5s has just been overwhelmingly a positive experience. Phenomenal sounding speaker, great performance, and I think that these small little bookshelf powered speakers could easily hang with some of the much more expensive HiFi powered speakers on the market today. Now, if you're interested in purchasing the 5s, I'll have a link to it down in the description below. And as always, you guys be blessed, and we'll catch you in the next video. Have you ever heard the phrase that small things come in big packages? That's not what I meant to say.